Welcome into Celtics Talk episode number 6. I'm Jackson Agello. He's Dennis Riley. Another interesting week here for the Celtics. It seems as though this team is relatively bipolar. One week we're talking about this team coming off victories over teams like the Lakers, who admittedly were shorthanded in that game, but they also beat in that stretch the Knicks, the Suns, the Warriors, the Blazers, the Nuggets, and now an embarrassing loss to the Hornets. So that brings us to big three topic number 1, Dennis. Who are the real Celtics, and at what juncture will they decide to stand up?
Yeah, it's super tough to say right now who they are. It's super hard to watch them and super hard to tell what they're doing. But
Well, it's not always hard to watch. Sometimes it's great. I mean,
sometimes it's great. Yeah,
the games the week before were pretty great to watch.
Yeah, the week even since our last show, that game against the Suns, great game to watch. We honestly played spectacular that
Put
game.
on a clinic.
Yeah, we did. Great defensive effort, which we haven't seen all year, especially the last two games. We'll get to that later. But the week started out strong. We looked like we had an identity. Ball was moving, defense was rolling, everything was going good against the Suns, and even the game against the Nets as well. Like I would say we played pretty solid. Made a little mini comeback at the end, almost pulled it off, but that's a tough team to beat any day of the week. They did have Katie and Harden out, of course, but still looks solid.
A deep team, even with Kyrie leading the way too.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, the real Celtics right now, I've mentioned this in the past, what we need to put ourselves forward and to be consistent is to put that effort out on the court every day. We've talked about consistency over and over and over again this year, and that's got to be a thing. That's got to be a thing coming up, especially with the playoff stretch. But they've not shown that much heart, especially during the Hornets game, even from the very beginning when they got down big. They never had a chance of coming back with the way they were looking out there.
I mean, the play that summed up that game in general is when one of the Martin twins, apologies for not remembering which one, but one of them, they went to NC State, just had a wide open lane for a dunk with one of the softest effort of a pass fake I've ever seen. It wasn't even so much of a pass fake as much as he caught the ball coming from this direction, turned, faced, and I guess that looked like he was faking a pass to the corner because two defenders went to the corner and absolutely no one was down the middle. He didn't even, if Moses parted the Red Sea with that little effort, I mean, he might even have been talked about even more highly.
True.
It was incredible. I mean, that just can't happen. Like, I don't care at what juncture of the season, if you're especially a team with the history of the Celtics, like that's not what historically you think about the Celtics being about. I mean, show some tape of 80s playoff basketball and think about if Kevin McHale was allowing a bunny at the rim like that, or what would happen if somebody left somebody that wide open for an easy dunk who didn't make some spectacular play. And even still, then somebody's got to be there to take them out. I mean, that cannot happen. That was a microcosm of that entire game where things that shouldn't ever happen were allowed to. I mean, Charlotte's a solid team, not a great team, very shorthanded, and you cannot allow them to get into that kind of rhythm. I know they had a good shooting day. That's going to happen. You're going to run into that in the NBA. That's why, make or miss league, you can lose to anybody.
True.
But it's all about how you lose them. If you lose to a Charlotte team that was red hot from three and they were taking and making tough shots, they moved the ball well, and you lost in a close one, understandable. Losing by 20, where you showed little to no defensive effort, that's unacceptable. But the grander scheme of the question was about who's the real team. I still think the real team is the more solid team that you've seen over the course of the season that is in a lot of close games. I think that's more the Celtics. I mean, we haven't seen them take the step above what would be a 4, 5, 6 seed, which is currently where the team resides. And in order to do that, they need big three thing number 2, which is some defensive effort. And they need that on a consistent basis. Because when we've seen that be there, I mean, they just dominate this. The Suns look lost, and that's the team that hasn't looked lost hardly ever this season.
Yeah, they've been rock solid all year, and we made them. I think they They shot, I know for a fact it was under 20% from three that game. We played really good closeout D. Just honestly solid all around D. Everyone played really well. And then like as the week went along, we just saw it go a little more downhill. The Nets game wasn't too bad. I feel like we played pretty solid there as well. Not as great as we were against the Suns, but like you said, against the Hornets, it just all fell
Holding any
apart.
team to 86 points in the modern NBA is impressive, let alone the
Yeah.
Suns.
Yep.
And they shot, as you mentioned, 17% from three.
Yep.
17%.
Yeah.
That's
That's
absurd.
unbelievable. Yeah, for especially where our defense has been all year. It's a really solid, yeah, like we said, solid start to the week. Looking on the up and up, but yeah, the Hornets just brought us back down to earth. I mean, they were
It's
firing away, making
the
everything. Our
credit where
defense
it's due
didn't
to the
help.
Celtics. They know when the fan base needs expectations to be managed.
That's true.
And that's what they did. They brought it right back. You know, the people were getting a little too cocky.
Yeah.
The win streak was getting just a little bit too high. You know, we've seen what happened with the Knicks. The Knicks have all of a sudden,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, winners of double-digit games in a row, and then all of a sudden, you know, the fan base is talking titles. You know,
Yeah.
you can't let things get too delusional. We got to manage expectations before the playoffs and whatnot. So you can't get too crazy. I mean, the range, as we've mentioned, is pretty wild. And in order for the Celtics to be there, we need to see a little more defense. We need to see, you know, we don't need to get 17% from three
Yeah,
against any given team. Like, but just the generic effort needs to be there going forward. It's not crazy. I don't think it's too much to ask for, and I don't think it's something this team isn't capable of.
Yeah. No, I think on most days, like we have the potential to always have a good defensive stand against most teams, especially a team like the Hornets who are missing Gordon Hayward and not Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, who are two of their best players this year, and two of their ball dominant people. But anyways, like yeah, like I said, I think we could bring it back. Especially we have a solid schedule coming up as well. We have a bottom five, or one of the five most easiest schedules coming up for the rest of the year. A lot of games that are super winnable, even for this team where they've been recently. I'm feeling pretty good about it, and I think a lot of those teams will be able to see what our defensive identity is going into the playoffs, and hopefully we could stick with that.
And speaking of the playoffs, what lies ahead is Big Three topic number 3. Like you mentioned, the playoffs and what's going on in the Eastern Conference with the present state of the standings. A great time, as you mentioned, Dennis, to have a forgiving schedule. Currently, the Celtics, you know, slotted down in the 6th spot in the conference standings. Knicks are at the 4 seed. And the difference in there is, you know, there's a whole jumble of teams at 28, 29, and 30 losses. A whole bunch of them as it goes down all the way to the Pacers at 9 with 31 losses. That's a large stack that the Celtics are a part of. And in order to have that, I mean, you still have to take advantage of it. But having a forgiving schedule at this time frame where if you could rack up some wins while some of these other teams who've played the lighter end of their schedule to get to the record they have now, bodes well for the Celtics. Because you don't want to be, you certainly don't want to fall below the 6th seed and have to deal with that's obvious. And I think with a forgiving schedule, the Celtics should be eyeing for that 4 seed. And I think it's really.
Yeah, no, we are on thin ice right now. It's with that playing game this year, the whole dynamic changes in the league, and I really, really don't want to play in that play game.
Neither does Luka.
Yeah, neither does Luka. Yeah, he's highly against it. And we saw his anger come out this week against him, and he played really well. But yeah, no, we've got to take advantage of this upcoming schedule, and I think we could do that. Especially, I also took a look at the Knicks' upcoming schedule, and they have one of the top 10 toughest schedules coming up. The Hawks, on the other hand, somewhere in the middle, but they have Trae Young, who's out with an ankle injury for a bit. So
which makes sense. I mean, the Knicks had some good. They did beat some good teams along that winning streak, but it was largely predicated upon beating up against some of the lesser opponents across the NBA.
I agree. Yeah, it was super big for their confidence going into the playoffs. That a massive winning streak. They left one of the best teams in the league during that stretch. But yeah, like you said, they did have a little bit of an easier schedule, but they did beat some tough teams along the way. And Julius Randle's on a different planet this year. He's been amazing.
And And what the Knicks did in that is sort of lay a blueprint going forward for the Celtics, which leads right into my final thought of the Celtics going forward playing consistently good basketball instead of occasionally great basketball. Because throughout some of these stretches, we've seen the Celtics catch absolute fire, be it for a quarter, be it for a half. They haven't been able to manage it consistently throughout an entire game. So instead of going for absolutely torrent pace where they're in desperate need of scoring because all of a sudden they're down big in a game and they have to turn it on because of a lack of focus at some juncture of the game, be consistently good. Be consistent with your defensive effort. Make the smart plays and get high quality shots that will consistently give you the opportunity to make shots at a winning field goal percentage. Because it's great. Jason Tatum is capable of still dropping 40 on contested jumper after contested jumper, but that's not a recipe for success every night.
Yep.
The way you win games, the way you build a historic offense is you take a tremendous offensive talent and you put them in a position to get shots that they will make even on a bad day. That's why the Warriors offense was so incredible outside of Steph's great shooting, was so historically potent when they had Steph, Clay, and all of them in lineup. Part of it was their amazing ability to shoot, but part of it was them putting them in the position to get their highest quality shots on a consistent basis, where even on an off night, if you get them enough of those open ones, they'll find a rhythm.
Yep. And I totally 100% agree with that statement. I think they need to be consistently good. Don't have to be out of this world every night. Suns level defense, offense level against when anybody plays the Wizards. They don't have to be on that level every night, but they just got to be consistent. Like you said, Tatum, he's been struggling shooting recently. He just got to get that consistency back, and it all starts with him, like we've said, both the Jays. And he's also had 19 turnovers in his past 4 games, not knocking him at all because he's one of the bright spots, especially against the Nets. But we need that consistency.
And that's the type of offense that Tatum's running that can win you a game. If you're playing like one game, like if the NBA was structured like March Madness, where you got to, on a given day, have a day, that strategy might be better on a given instance, potentially. Like you can get hot and it'll get by. It wouldn't be better in general in the long term as far as how many games you'd win, but on any given day, that could work out for you. But over the course of a 7-game series, which is what you have to do again and again and again in the NBA to make it to the finals, ideally, which we'll see if that's in the cards for the Celtics, you need consistency.
Yep. Yeah. And like you said, in the playoffs coming up, it's going to be a long haul. So we got to make sure that we play the same way every night and don't go too all out one night more than the other. Stay on the same level and stay good. And going into my final thought, I think it bodes well with the playoff talk. It's something that we've been struggling with all season. One of the most COVID-ravaged teams in the league. I think we are the most COVID-affected team in the league right now, is getting healthy / recovering. Right now, or recently, we've seen Fournier just come back from having COVID for a while. He's looked super shaky. 2 points in his first 2 games back. 0 for 7 in his first game, but he's probably still feeling the after effects. So we'll have to, like a few episodes ago when we were talking about Fournier's first games with the Celtics, we got to give him a little bit of time to get back. He's probably a little rusty and still feeling a little fatigued out there. And also another huge miss that we've had recently, even with Tristan Thompson playing very solid recently, is Time Lord Rob Williams coming back. He's been having, I think it's the back of his knees been hurting because he has that condition with his arteries and his legs. So it's been tiring him out. And so at first it seems like it would be like a 1-2 game span where he'd be out, but it's starting to get a little concerning.
You never like those injuries that just sort of keep lingering.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the regular updates from the staff. That's usually never a great sign.
Exactly. And it's similar with Kemba as well, with his knee, load management with his knee. And he just, in the past game, he had some sort of hip twinge on the side, and that's keeping him out, as well as Tatum, actually. Tatum has an ankle injury for the next game. So it's just every game, we just can't seem to get healthy. But hopefully by playoff time, we will.
And I do think part of that, what would give me optimism as a Celtics fan for the playoffs is the load management now, while, you need to win these games. At the same time, for a team like the Celtics that will be in the playoffs,
Yep.
It's a long season, and this season it's very condensed. Like the average game per week for a team is almost a full half game higher than it was a season ago.
Busy
So
schedule.
you're playing a lot more frequently, which is why I think you've seen a lot more of like not necessarily massive injuries to players, but I think that's been kind of on par, but a lot more nagging ones. You know, little twinges here that cause players to miss here and there, not just on the Celtics, but obviously they've been heavily affected by that. And I think that's been a thing across the league this year. It comes with the territory of that.
Yep.
You're just gonna see it.
Exactly. And with COVID, people were out throughout the whole year last year, at home all the time, didn't have as much time to get to the facilities, practice with the full teams. A lot of teams didn't even go to the bubble. So I think it's all has to come down with that, with all these games in such a short span of time, like you said. It's a lot. It's a lot for the players. It's a lot of conditioning that they have to keep up with, and a lot of strain on their bodies. So hopefully once playoffs come, games every other day, they'll be able to take at least a little breather from back-to-backs and stuff like that. But the playoffs should be interesting.
Should be interesting. We'll get a better idea about the picture of the seeding come next week after a couple more games here for the Celtics, 4 more this week. It's another grind. You got Oklahoma City, Charlotte, San Antonio, and Portland, and a bit of a revenge opportunity against Charlotte and a quick turnaround there. And 3 teams that you should beat and 1 that you pick them. Against Portland, both good teams.
Portland's tough game.
So we'll see what happens with the course this week. Hopefully, we'll learn a little bit more who the real Celtics are. I think 3-1, and I'm happy. When we're talking next week, 3-1, and I'm happy. I think that's anything less than that, you're disappointed. You're a little disappointed. 2-2, you'll live. 3-1, you're happy. 1-3 or 0-4, you're irate. 4-0 is obvious. Like you don't need to explain how you're feeling on that. So we'll find out which position we're in come next week. He's Dennis. I'm Jackson. We'll see you then.
See you guys.